Our employees of Reddit, what was the most ridiculous hilarious complaint you ever received? My work has one men's toilet. Had one coworker complain that another guy kept using the bathroom before him and doing big old poos. But the way he said it was like this guy knew when he was about to go ninja in just before him, dropped a massive stinker, and then forced the other guy to marinate in the smell when he went for a leak afterwards. We ended up adding a can of air freshener to the bathroom, and the next complaint that came in was the poo guy never used it. 20 years in hours. 2 female employees visited me to complain that their female team member didn't wear underwear under her work pants. She wanted to lodge a complaint against a colleague who had a new TV delivered to the office instead of home, and she thought her colleagues spending money on the TV was irresponsible. I recently had ours tell me that one of my staff had been undersupplied in his annual leave over the past few years, and he needed to take at least 10 days off over the next 6 months to correct the leave liability. Paid at a higher rate than usual to make up for the error, of course. He could take a 2-week block, or, say, a day off a week, until he'd use the leave, his choice. He was so enraged over being given extra paid holidays that he wrote to our general manager to complain, screamed at me, his boss, I know my rights, refused the leave or even to discuss why he wouldn't take it. Anyway, I wrote his performance review this week and there are multiple goals about professional, respectful behavior that need to be reached in order for him to get a raise this year. Yeah, not so much. Oh, and he still has to take the 10 days off. I can actually think of a reason someone might react that way. They've been doing something illegal which would be discovered if anyone else was assigned to their job for a day, and they never got around to thinking up any way to prevent that discovery. It's one of the reasons why senior financial personnel in major corporations are effectively forced to take vacations in blocks large enough that someone else has to do their job for a few weeks. This staff member of yours might not have the same level of responsibility, but if there are any numbers or stock they are in charge of, maybe get someone to audit that while this guy's away. Our consultant for 10+ years. You won't believe the amount of times I've had to shut people down for trying to sell their pyramid scheme side hustle in the office. Not ours, but I have a story about an our person that I will never forget. The company I worked for hired a new girl in the our department. She was young and very enthusiastic. I'm sure this was probably her first job out of college. Cut to a week or so later, and I'm riding in the elevator on the way up to the executive floor, and she steps in with me. A couple floors later we stop, and an older gentleman wearing a polo shirt and jeans gets on. Before I could greet him, she says, pretty casual for a work day, huh? I had to stifle my laughter when he replied with, that's one of the benefits of owning the company. She turned an amazing color of red that I haven't seen since. It was all in good fun though. She ended up working there a long time. An employee used very derogatory terms to make fun of a customer who was in the back of the store. While talking to the customer who was at the counter, who happened to be the other customer's mother, yikes. Was once asked to investigate a sexual harassment situation where 3 different women were coming onto a male coworker throughout their shift. I took down the details, got the names, easy peasy investigation, so I thought. A week later, nobody by these descriptions or names had ever worked for the company. I decided to talk to the gentleman again. After a lengthy conversation, where things didn't quite stack up, I asked him how these women communicated with him. I shit you not, with a straight face, he looks me in the eye and replies telepathically, like I'm some kind of idiot. I had never sent an employee for psychological evaluation up to that point, and I hope never to have to again. So yeah, I was asked by a delusional schizophrenic to conduct a sex harassment investigation on the voices in his head. My our department once fell for a phishing email and sent everyone's W2S to a random hacker. Ours then informed everyone via a mass email with no read receipts at 9 p.m. on a Friday. Even though multiple people were on vacation and had left instructions to be called in an emergency, when I got back from my trip a week later and expressed my concern about her not actually notifying me about this, she totally brushed it off. I said, do you realize that I need to freeze my credit and I'm 7 days late in doing so? She said no, don't freeze your credit. You won't be able to use your credit cards if you do. Another time, during a workers' comp claim, I needed to speak to our claims adjuster, and she said an adjuster doesn't get assigned until after the claim is settled. That's the exact opposite of how that works. She was my stupid complaint. I was a manager and had to call our hours in on this one. We had a computer that was used by multiple people and a couple of girls complained that it had a virus and pronoun was always popping up when they turned it on in the morning. I decided to have look-see if someone was ducking around on the closing shift, so I looked at the security footage and lo and behold, one of the supervisors was watching pronoun and jerking off. When we called him in, he didn't deny it, but said technically he didn't pull his dick out, he just played with it in his pants, so it's not really that bad. The hour guy just looked at him, didn't say a word until after what seemed like forever. The jerker said, "So I guess I'm fired," and then walked out. Edit, a word. I told my coworker as professionally as I could that it wasn't appropriate for her to be using her phone while at work, teaching kids. Supposedly, she spent all her time on Facebook. Little kids would be screaming and wailing on each other literally 10 feet away, and she was totally oblivious. She complained by email 2 hours that I was rude and confrontational. They pulled me aside and told me to be more careful about how I spoke to coworkers. I told them my side of the story. They spoke to her again. She got a written warning. They didn't tell me what happened, but I gather from office gossip that she lost her sheet and started shouting at the hour staff. Rude and confrontational perhaps. Anyway, she's on her final warning now, and she has a habit of hitting on the married dads of our kids, involving children and adult matters. Why hasn't your mummy paid your fees yet? Don't you want to come to daycare? And generally being an UN professional, self-absorbed pitasso. Can't wait until she gets fired. You wouldn't believe the headaches that I received when management signed a new copier printer lease which reduced the overall number of printers in exchange for centrally located multiplex copiers. Evidently, people feel their social standing is signified by if they have a printer or two in their office. My favorite was an executive assistant who stated that because she wears heels to work she couldn't walk to the new copier, and requested that a reasonable accommodation would be to replace the printer she had in her office. We had a complaint that the toilet roll holders were too low in the stalls because when a guy was taking a poo his knees were hitting the holders. We then lifted all the stalls' toilet roll holders 8 inches on whole company site so no knees would hit the toilet roll holders. No complaints since. Hours working for the people. A woman claimed that people were spreading rumors about her sleeping with coworkers. The investigation wasn't even done, yet when she moved in with one of the guys, the others showed me texts and nude pics she had sent them. And if that wasn't enough, she followed me home from the bar one night to make sure I was okay. I shut my door in her face and the next day said I was too drunk and didn't realize she was there. Had enough from everything else. I didn't even need to bring that part into the conversation with her supervisor. I worked in hours and my coworker hated me. She wanted someone else to get the job I did, and she would complain about me to management for anything. The final straw for everyone was when I sneezed, and she slammed her keyboard on her desk, basically ran out of the room, and didn't come back for 30 minutes. Management called me in and said I was making too much noise. I told them I sneezed, and they said she would complain about me every day, so they didn't believe her, but had to make it look like they were doing something. She left shortly after. She came in with a complaint that she tried to give one of the younger guys a hug and he refused. His story was that he basically had to run away. I had to explain to a middle-aged woman that it was not her right to hug people who didn't want to be hugged. She still didn't get it and left thinking she was still in the right. Not ours, but my company is too small to have one, so it just falls on me. Used to have an art clerk who would snack at her desk all day long. We are a pretty casual, laid-back company, so it's not a big deal, as long as she was getting her work done. But then it escalated to having food constantly being delivered, tacos in the morning, pizza at lunch, Chinese in the afternoon. It was bizarre and made it difficult for her to work when she's eating full meals all day. I was on the fence about saying something until she brought in an Instant Pot. She plugged it in and cooked a freaking pork roast at her desk, poured in BBQ sauce she brought, and ate on it all day. I was dumbfounded. It was so strange. I pulled her aside the next day and told her how unprofessional it was. She was shocked and told me I was being unfair because I never specifically said no one was allowed to bring in an Instant Pot. She truly seemed genuinely surprised that she wasn't allowed to do that. She scaled it down after that, but I sometimes wonder how much further she would have gone if I never said anything. I was the complainer. My buddy was dating a girl that worked in hours at my company. Their relationship starting was totally unrelated to me. They had gone to college together. He dumped her and she didn't take it well and started threatening my job since I was still friends with him. I lodged a complaint just through the main email, complaints@company.com, or whatever it was. My complaint was assigned to guess who? I ended up having to independently schedule a meeting with the VP of ours because the regular reps and middle managers were protecting their rep rather than believing me. Not ours, but a complaint raised against my hostile and unfriendly behavior. Yeri had to explain to the head of ours that the complainant had walked up behind me whilst I was relieving myself at a urinal, launching into a detailed explanation of their computer problem. Rather than say shut the duck up, reboot your PC and leave me alone, I replied, please log a ticket for me, so yeah, prompting them to follow the proper procedure. Never mind accosting me whilst urinating was me being hostile. The complaint was promptly filed in the under desk circular receptacle. I'm not in hours, but someone called hours on me. I work with a few people that aren't that fluent in English. One of my coworkers was trying to explain to me what kind of tacos he ate and could not remember the word for stingrays. So he took my notebook and drew a picture of a stingrays and wrote the word turtle. So it looked like this: crudely drawn stingray plus the word turtle. A lady I work with went through my notebook, saw the picture of the stingray plus the word turtle. She called ours because she thought I was writing notes about her in my notebook. She said that horribly drawn stingray plus the word turtle meant that I want to punch her in the face because she is slow like a turtle. Definitely a reach. I didn't get in trouble. I was just told by my boss that I'm not allowed to talk about turtles anymore in case it upsets her. I rarely talk about turtles, so this isn't really a problem for me. Edit. I'm still relatively new to Reddit, so I'm not sure if this is an acceptable way to do this, but I'm just going to edit the original post to answer everybody's burning question. He was not eating stingray turtle tacos at work. He was telling me that was his favorite type of tacos to eat when he was at home. He is originally from Mexico and is an hour on a TN visa. Maybe in his coastal Mexican town it is normal to eat stingrays and turtles. I have no idea, really. All I know is I couldn't help him in the slightest when he asked me if I knew where to get stingray meat. I don't know if the story fits, but I'll tell it anyway. I went to ours once to complain that my manager refused to give me a couple of vacation days. The hour lady reminded me about the boilerplate rule that vacation time must be mutually acceptable to the employee and the company. I then pulled out 6 more vacation requests that had all been denied, including one that was denied in writing for a reason that was not permitted. I asked her if the company is allowed to say that it's never acceptable. My last request was undenied. Not ours, but my friend who is recently told me about a VP at his company making a post on LinkedIn with one of the new employees as his #WCW Woman Crush Wednesday. The WCW lady was happy about it. The complaint came from 2 women who didn't get the promotion to that position.